Gaia's new show, Missing Links, takes a look at new discoveries in ancient wisdom to help reveal the hidden truths of humanity. I'm here with Gregg Braden, who's the host of the show. He's a celebrated author and scientist who's been working in bridging science and spirituality for decades. Thank you so much for being here, Greg. We're very honored to have you.
I'm so honored to be here. I'm thrilled to talk about this new program. This is a really, really very special program we put together.
We're very excited to release it in the new year coming out. And I think what makes this show so special for us here on Gaia is that you're really bringing together science behind a lot of the things that people theorize and maybe feel and have the awareness about, but they don't have the science to back it up.
You know, I think it's really important for a couple of reasons. One, it's my way of honoring our viewers because we are all inundated, myself included, we are all inundated with so much information on this World Wide Web. And we get, you know, every day new discoveries are plopped down on our inbox. How do you know what's real and what's not? And my focus in this program, Missing Links, has been to use peer-reviewed science. And peer-reviewed science is a little bit different than just a scientific report that might come out from somewhere. Peer-reviewed science means that a scientist or a group of scientists have done the research, they released a paper, and they circulate this paper among their peers, hence the term peer review. And it's a process. It doesn't happen in a day. It can take months, it can take years. It can take 6, 7, 8 years. And in that process, other experts in different fields will look at what they have found and they'll say, here's where you're right, here's where you're wrong, here's where you need more work. And then when it is finally published in a peer-reviewed journal, like the journal Science or like the journal Nature, what we know, it doesn't guarantee 100 million%, but what it says is a really good chance of what we're seeing is pretty close to what's really happening. And I think this is important because so many people are now hinging healthcare decisions, for example, on information that's coming to them through the internet. And what if they're hinging a healthcare decision on something that's not true? You know, our world is changing. We've got to think and solve problems differently than we ever have. And the old ways of thinking, we know they're not sustainable, they're not working. So these new ideas based in peer-reviewed discoveries give us a new toolbox so that when we are faced with challenges in our world and the old ideas and the old ways of thinking and the old solutions don't work, cool, we can let them go. And we've got a whole new toolbox. The problem is that a lot of the information is simply not making it in the mainstream. And so that's why I'm honored to have Gaia behind me and this amazing team, this awesome team that our viewers probably will never even get to see. But I know the marketing people, the video people, the film, the scripting, all the publicity, everything, post-production, everything that's gone into this so that we can bring this to our audience, our viewers, in a way that is really honoring to them. So that's a long answer to a short question, but I'm really excited. This is why I'm so excited about this program.
You mentioned that the mainstream narrative doesn't really like to discuss any of these findings that are happening. Why do you think there's such resistance to change?
That's a good question, and it's a question that I'm asked frequently. And what I'll say is the short answer is very easy. It's money, power, ego, and habit are the reasons that we're not seeing these discoveries in the mainstream. And I also say that it's changing, but the change, I had a colleague once that said change in a big corporation, change in a nation is kind of like a big ship on the ocean. When they want to turn around and go back the direction they came from, they don't turn on a dime. It's a broad, long, sweeping turn that eventually gets them going the other direction. Change is like that. But it is difficult. I have friends in academia that have devoted and dedicated their entire lives, 40, 50 years, to teaching. And what they have said to me, they've said, Greg, if we share this new information, it invalidates our careers, is the feeling. And I said, no. If you share this new information, it actually validates science because science is designed to be constantly updated. You're showing your students how valid science is because it's not locked into a specific way of thinking. And they say, well, you know, think of how much money it would take to change the textbooks. And I say, well, that's no problem at all because they're all digital. You change it on one computer and it's changed for everyone. And then they say, well, I have to go back and change my notes that I've created for 50 years. And I say, hey, that's your job. You know, that's what you're paid for. So it's a combination of things. But I will say that Mainstream academia is very invested in a scientific story that we now know is false. And if we cling to this story, we are teaching our young people a false science, and we're not helping them to solve the problems that we're leaving them and asking them to solve through the same thinking that led to the problem. So I think it behooves us to honor our young people and future generations by sharing the best of what we know to be true. But I want to be really, really clear. It doesn't mean we have to throw out all the old information. I think the way to honor ourselves and our young people is to share everything that we now know to be true. Here's the old story, here's what we now know, and to show that we don't have all the answers locked up in this nice, tidy, neat way inspires young people, because if the answers are already there, then they just have to memorize them. But if they understand that new answers have yet to be found, then they say, maybe I'm the one that can do that. And that inspires young people to go out there and understand and study and explore. And I think that's what science is all about.
So as far as younger generations, I really think there are a lot of people who want this change. They want a better world to live in and believe in. Yeah. But they're often met with peers who don't see the same that way, or maybe family members that don't agree. Can you give them any advice to maybe continue their empowered way of thinking so that they don't give up?
Yeah, this is the year 2016, and March of this year was my 30th anniversary of offering this material in one form or another. And my path has been to marry the best science of the modern world with the understandings of ancient and indigenous people. It's not science, but it's practical wisdom, and marry those together. And I brought a consultant in for a period of time to follow me to the different programs, because I wanted to know who I was speaking to. And they prepared these beautiful hardbound reports of charts and graphs and pie charts of demographics, who my audience was. And we were speaking to young people, their parents, and their grandparents. 3 generations were coming. The young people often would come to me and say this, and this is directly to your question. They'd say, Gregg, in this room with these people, everything that you have just said and everything we're talking about makes perfect sense. When I go to school, nobody thinks this way. And I understand that, because I live that in my life as well. And what I've come to understand, and this is what I can say to young people, is every one of us in our own lives, we have to develop what I call the spiritual anchor, the rock, the soul compass. And it has nothing to do with religion. When I say the spiritual anchor, the spiritual anchor is when we know who we are in relationship to ourselves. We know who we are in relationship to the earth, to one another, to our past, to our future. We know how we are empowered and what our potential is. And once you know that, we then can live our truth in a world whether other people support it or not. When we depend on other people for that support, that's where we give our power away. And that's where many of us come from. I'll just say to the young people listening, I come from a very difficult family background, dysfunctional alcoholic family, full of criticism, instilling self-doubt in the young people. I have a younger brother. We came from the same family and we had the same criticisms. I didn't believe what my father told me about my inability in life. And my younger brother, he did believe it. He embraced much of it. And it's so interesting. 2 different people, the same family, same background, interpreting the information differently. And I attribute my ability to let that criticism roll off of me in the blessing I had very early on. I knew who I was, and I understood my place in this world at an early age. And not everyone has that, but I began looking at an early age. You know, it takes a lot of work to explore the potential within every one of us. And there was a very famous author and prophet early in the 20th century. His name is Khalil Gibran. And I began reading Khalil Gibran when I was 8 years old. In Khalil Gibran, there is one sentence that has been my soul compass. It has been with me. I think of it every day. I apply it in every situation, every relationship, every job, every commitment. What he said is, work is love made visible. It takes a lot of work to know who we are in this world and to demonstrate for ourselves our potential. That is our love made visible. That is us loving ourselves in a way that empowers us to be in this world in a healthy way where we thrive in the presence of all of the changes. So my invitation for any young people is love yourself. And your love made visible is you taking the time to understand your potential and who you really are. The good news is we have that information now. New discoveries, new science, indigenous wisdom married together. I think we owe it to ourselves to bring it all to bear in our lives today.
How can we get people to care about all these wonderful findings and new discoveries and ancient wisdoms when it seems people have a hard enough time caring and learning how to nurture themselves? What is the one thing we can try to get people to start to change?
It is difficult, and our lives are so very full. And I have people say something similar to me all the time. I don't have time to understand myself because I'm trying to put food on my table and feed my family, or I'm trying to do my best in school. And those, I understand all of that. Here's the thing. We have been conditioned to live in a world through a way of thinking that has served us in the past. And we have to say it served us because you and I are here now, so it worked well enough to get us here. That way of thinking worked in the world the way it used to be. The world just changed and nobody told us. There was no special on CNN, or the Discovery Channel. Hey, the world changed. I wish there was. So we've never been given the opportunity to even mourn the passing of the world that no longer exists. So we're trying to solve our problems and think about ourselves the way we always have in a world that changed, and it doesn't fit. It no longer fits. So yes, we've got all these little things going on, but what I've found in my own life personally, if I can back up and shift the paradigm, and I'll tell you what I mean by that, but if I can shift the paradigm within which I'm seeing everything, all of a sudden all those little things take on a whole new meaning and they become a lot less of a problem. They become much easier. The paradigm is this. We have been conditioned, steeped in a story of who we are that is based in separation, competition, and conflict. It began in 1859. And people say to me, Greg, 1859, it was over 100 years ago, 150 years ago. So what? It's a good question. What difference does that make? It's a good question. Here's the answer. The world we live in, the society, the economic system, the corporations, the medical model, the way that we're taught to provide for our families, the way that we are taught to have the most intimate relationships under the roof with the people that we share our homes and even our bed with. Let's just get real. We are taught to interact with humans based upon these ideas of competition, conflict, and separation. And even the most spiritually minded people that say, I've transcended that, when they are in a heated discussion and somebody pushes their buttons, they go to that lowest common denominator often of competition. They will lash out with something really hurtful to defend themselves. It's not their fault. It's deeply ingrained in our subconscious. So not if, because it's already happening, as we back off and embrace the new paradigm of cooperation and mutual aid, that is huge. It is a hugely different way of thinking. It means we live in a world that likes us, where nature is not out to snuff out every good thing that happens to us. It means we don't have to be constantly vigilant in defending ourselves from the world around us. That is a hugely, vastly different way of thinking. And we have an opportunity now to begin with an entire generation of young people who now are steeped in the glamour of war, conflict, and competition to make that shift. What would it look like to have a world where we have an entire generation of young people that know that nature likes them and that we live in a world of cooperation and mutual aid and connection? We're about to find out. We don't have to wait long to find out. So for me, simply backing up out of the minutia momentarily to look at the big picture and to make that shift, and once we make that shift, when you go back into the minutia, everything looks different to me. And that it's worked in my life.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wonderful insight. We're so excited for your new show, Missing Links, which will be out in January of 2017. Be sure to tune into Gaia.com for more original programming and exclusives with Gregg Braden.